Hello, my dear listener. Before we begin, I want you to take a deep breath with me. Inhale gently and let it go. Let the tension of the day melt away just for now. Let the sounds around you soften into the background. Tonight, I won't just tell you stories. I'll share with you fragments of my soul, shaped by ancient Zen whispers that found their way into the quietest parts of my heart. These are not tales from books. These are awakenings that came to me when I least expected, in waiting rooms, on sleepless nights, in the silence after tears. They are simple yet strange, small yet eternal. I was not a monk. I had no robes, no rituals, no temple. But something in these Zen stories, these quiet koans and paradoxes, began to loosen the knots in me. They didn't give me answers. They dissolved the questions. And now I offer them to you, not as teachings, not as solutions, but as companions for your inner walk. Whether you are healing from something unseen, questioning your direction, or simply longing for stillness in a world that never stops spitting. Have you ever heard a story that didn't just move you, but unmade you quietly, like a wave smoothing a jagged stone? If so, this journey is for you. So lie back, let the darkness cradle you, and let the stories begin, slowly, one breath at a time. Welcome to My Journey, Zen Stories That Touched Me. Part 1. The Gate Was Never Locked. They say every journey begins with a single step, but mine began with a pause. It wasn't dramatic. There was no lightning strike, no mystical dream. Just a quiet moment in the middle of a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday where the hours blend together and your thoughts feel like moths bumping against a light bulb. I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at the steam rising from a chipped blue teacup. The world outside was moving on. Cars on wet pavement, neighbors watering plants, the television muttering nonsense in the background. And I felt unfinished, as though I had lived many years but hadn't really begun. You see, I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't whole either. There was a certain restlessness that curled itself around my bones, a longing that didn't speak in words, only in weight. And then, like a strange leaf blowing in through a window left open by mistake, I found it. A thin little book with yellowed pages, forgotten on the shelf of a second-hand bookstore. Its title, The Gateless Gate. I remember laughing, softly, at the contradiction. A gate with no gate? A path with no path? It felt like nonsense, but something in that absurdity pulled me in. That night, long after the dishes were done and the house had fallen into its usual hush, I opened the book. The first story was short, only a paragraph really. A monk asked Master Zhaozhou, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" Zhaozhou said, "Moo." That's it. No explanation, no lesson, just one word, moo, which doesn't translate cleanly into English, but roughly means no, or more accurately, unask the question. I blinked. I read it again. Then I read it 5 more times. I didn't understand, but something inside me stirred. Not in my brain, but deeper, like an itch beneath the ribs. That was the beginning. Let me tell you what happened next. I didn't become enlightened. I didn't shave my head, renounce my belongings, or sit cross-legged under a cherry blossom tree. But I began to feel different, subtly. It was like my soul had been handed a riddle, and instead of solving it, it began to listen. A few days later, I came across another tale, one that has haunted me in the softest way ever since. It was called The Gate Was Never Locked. Here's how it goes. A young seeker travels many miles to find the legendary Zen master who guards the entrance to enlightenment. He climbs mountains, crosses rivers, walks barefoot through storms. At last, he arrives at the monastery and finds a towering wooden gate. He stands outside, waiting to be invited in. Hours pass, then days, then weeks. He meditates, fasts, prays, and finally, in desperation, he throws himself at the gate, crying, "Please, Master, let me in." From the other side, a calm voice replies, "Why do you wait? The gate was never locked." The seeker pushes, and the gate swings open, effortlessly. That story shook something loose in me. I remember sitting with that tale like it was a cup of tea that never cooled. What had I been waiting on all my life? Permission, validation, some grand external sign that now was the time to begin healing, to begin living? I realized I had been standing outside my own life, waiting for someone to open a door that was never locked to begin with. I thought about all the moments I had said no to myself. No, you're too old. No, it's too late. No, who do you think you are? And suddenly, I saw them for what they were, shadows on a wall. I had never tried the handle. Zen doesn't teach you, it undoes you. What makes these stories magical isn't what they explain, it's what they unravel. They're not meant to be understood the way we understand recipes or instructions. They're koans, strange little puzzles designed to bypass the logic of the mind and reach the quiet underneath. And when they land, oh, how gently they unmake your beliefs. I began to notice things. How often I blamed the world for my storms. How rarely I stood still without needing a reason. How often I tried to fix others before sitting with myself. The gate wasn't out there. It never was. It was within, waiting, not locked, not guarded, just unnoticed. You and I are not so different. Maybe you felt it too, that quiet pull, that wondering if there's something more, not in a dramatic, movie-ending way, but in the soft ache behind your eyes at night. Maybe you too have stood before a gate, waiting for a sign, hoping for permission. Let me whisper this just for you. The gate is already open. You were always allowed in. All that's needed is one quiet breath and the willingness to step. Before we close tonight, I want to leave you with this reflection. What gates have you imagined in your life? Where have you stood outside, waiting, doubting, delaying, when the door was already open? Don't try to answer. Just let the question drift like smoke. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the image of that gate stay with you, not as something to fear or conquer, but as a gentle reminder that sometimes the most sacred doors do not open outward. They dissolve when we remember they were never real. Next time, I'll share the story that broke my habit of blame. It's called The Empty Boat. And I promise, it may float right into a place in your heart you didn't know was still waiting to be forgiven. But for now, sleep gently, dream freely. The gate is open. Good night. Part 2. The Empty Boat. Let us drift now, together, into still waters. Have you ever been struck by someone's words so deeply that they echo within you for years? Not because they were loud, not because they were clever, but because they were quiet, perfectly placed. like a single raindrop on a still lake. That's how this next story arrived. I wasn't looking for it. It found me. One autumn evening, when the sun had just dipped below the rooftops, and I was standing by a narrow pond behind an old retreat house. There was wind in the reeds, and I was carrying something heavy, but I didn't yet know its name. I had been wrestling with someone in my life, or perhaps more accurately, wrestling with my idea of them. A person who had disappointed me, let me down, pushed buttons I didn't know were still wired to my nervous system. I had replayed their words in my mind so many times they felt memorized. Each replay added fuel to the slow-burning fire of resentment inside me. And then I heard the story. Not from a teacher, not from a book, but from an older man sitting beside me on a weathered bench sipping tea out of a paper cup. He said, "You know, there's a Zen story that saved me from myself once. It's called The Empty Boat. Here is how it goes. A man is rowing his boat down a misty river, his mind drifting between plans and worries, when suddenly another boat comes floating toward him, rapidly, directly, silently. He calls out, 'Watch where you're going!' But the boat does not slow. He yells again, louder this time, 'Are you blind? Move aside!' Still, the boat continues. And then, the two boats collide. The man leaps up in fury, ready to curse the careless fool inside the other vessel. But as he steps forward, he sees the boat is completely empty. No one is inside. Just an abandoned vessel drifting with the current. And in that moment, the man realizes his anger was not caused by the other. It came from within himself. I remember staring at the pond. As that old man finished speaking, I turned to him slowly. He didn't say anything more. He just sipped his tea. The silence between us grew long and warm, like a quilt pulled up on a cold night. I turned back to the water, and I imagined all the boats that had bumped into me in my life, all the people I had blamed, all the stories I had told myself about being wronged, insulted, betrayed. And suddenly, I saw those boats for what they were, empty. Not because the people didn't exist, but because they were being pushed by currents of pain I couldn't see. They weren't crashing into me with purpose. They were drifting, just like me, caught in tides of their own wounds, their own stories, just like me. The real impact. For weeks after hearing that story, I carried it like a stone in my pocket. It wasn't always comforting. At first, it was humbling. You see, when we blame others, we build a wall, a story in which we are the righteous center and the world conspires against us. But Zen doesn't feed that narrative. It dissolves it. It places the mirror not in their hands, but in ours. I began to notice something strange. When someone snapped at me, or ignored me, or pushed me emotionally, I would pause, I would breathe, and silently I would whisper to myself, "This boat may be empty." It didn't make me passive, it made me present. But it goes even deeper. There's something else in that tale, something even more subtle. The man in the boat was alone. The river was misty, and the crash wasn't just between two boats. It was between his illusion of control and the nature of reality. We all want to steer, to direct our lives with precision, to avoid bumps and collisions and the discomfort of disorder. But life drifts, and sometimes the very thing that feels like an assault is simply a current doing what it does. The question is not how to stop the river. The question is, how do we ride it without capsizing ourselves? A personal confession. There was someone in my life I hadn't spoken to in years, a sibling. We had fallen out over something small that became large, as such things often do. For the longest time, I blamed them. Their stubbornness, their lack of understanding. But after the story of the empty boat, I saw myself differently. I saw that maybe, just maybe, I had been clinging to my own sense of rightness like an anchor in shallow water, and that anchor had kept me from drifting forward. So I wrote a letter, not to explain, not to fix, just to say, I'm here, I'm rowing too, I wish you peace. They never replied, but something inside me did. It loosened, it softened, it exhaled, and that was enough. The gift of the empty boat. This Zen tale isn't about excusing cruelty. It's about remembering that everyone, including us, is moved by winds we can't always see. Some people crash into us because they're hurt. Some are afraid. Some are just drifting, unconscious of what their presence does to others. But if we can hold that truth gently, we can stop letting every collision break us. We can learn to move with compassion instead of defense. Still strong, still clear, but not so easily pierced. Let this thought tuck into you tonight. As you prepare for sleep, think of a boat. Think of one that bumped into you recently. A careless word, a sharp look, a silence you weren't expecting. Now imagine that boat is empty. It was not aimed, it was not cruel, it just came. What would change in your heart if you stopped rowing in circles of blame and simply let it go? What would open up in your life if you no longer took every impact so personally? What peace would fill you if you could meet the world not with armored walls, but with a soft, steady hand on your oar? Next time, we'll step into a different kind of simplicity, a story about worn-out shoes and how sometimes true wisdom lies not in seeking more, but in cherishing less. Until then, float gently, and may the river carry you kindly through the night. Part 3. The Worn-Out Shoes. Come close again. Let the world hush. There's something small I want to show you. Not something loud or bright or polished, but something old, soft at the edges, nearly forgotten. A pair of worn-out shoes. Let me tell you how they changed me. The illusion of more. We live in a world that worships the new. New homes, new titles, new routines, new dreams. Even in our pain, we look for new fixes, new mantras, new methods, new escapes. But the trouble is, sometimes healing isn't about gaining more. It's about seeing clearly what you already have and learning how to walk in it. That was a lesson I didn't know I needed until I met a monk, barefoot on a gravel path, and saw the strangest smile cross his face. The meeting that wasn't meant to be. I was attending a retreat in the hills of Northern California. Not because I wanted to. Honestly, I had been convinced to go by a friend. He said it would clear my energy. I wasn't sure I had energy, let alone the kind that needed clearing. But I went, out of politeness more than belief. The center was quiet, almost too quiet. No phones, no speaking after sunset, no coffee. I felt like a tourist in someone else's silence. On the second day, after a long session of walking meditation, I wandered to the garden. There, among the stones and wooden benches, sat an old monk. His robes faded like autumn leaves, his hands folded over his knees. his eyes nearly closed, but watching everything. And beside him, a pair of shoes, torn at the seams, faded beyond color. Frayed laces looped so many times, they looked like they were begging for mercy. I remember thinking, they should give him new ones. As I stood there, caught between concern and curiosity, he turned to me slowly, and without a word, he placed one hand gently atop those ruined shoes. His eyes met mine. Then, quietly, he whispered, "These are enough." 3 words, a whole world. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't have to, because something in me cracked open. These are enough. Not perfect, not ideal, not impressive, just enough. For walking, for standing, for living one more quiet day. That evening, I sat alone in my room and looked at my own shoes. Polished, new, bought just for the trip, and yet, I realized they didn't carry what his did. His shoes had stories, silence, sacrifice. Mine had appearance. And suddenly, I saw how I had been living, trying to always replace the old before it taught me, trying to keep everything spotless instead of meaningful. Zen and the art of worn things. There's a Zen saying, "The way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart." But sometimes the way is also underfoot, literally, in how we walk the path. We chase spiritual truths like we chase upgrades. But Zen teaches that insight often hides in what we overlook. The cup with a chip still holds tea. The robe with a tear still warms the body. The shoes with frayed edges still carry the soul forward. And so do we. You too are enough, even with the seams of your life showing, even with the laces of your story knotted in strange ways. You don't need to replace your life. You need to wear it with presence. My quiet shift. After that retreat, something small but stubborn began to change in me. I stopped buying things I didn't need. I stopped running from the worn-out parts of myself, the tired routines, the aging memories, the parts I used to wish away. Instead, I started asking a different question. Not what's missing, but what have I not yet noticed? The result? Peace. Not loud peace, not Instagrammable peace, but the kind that feels like an exhale after a long cry. I began to cherish the way my old coat smelled of firewood, the way my kitchen light flickered at just the right angle when the sun went down, the way my hands, though wrinkled, could still hold warmth and memory. I stopped chasing new and began to notice now. A reflection for you. Tonight, as you prepare to drift into rest, I invite you to think about the shoes you've been wearing. What parts of your life do you see as broken, outdated, worn out? Is it your body, your sense of purpose, a relationship that has lost its shine? What if, instead of replacing it, you softened toward it? What if, just for this evening, you placed your hand gently over it and whispered, "This is enough"? Can you feel how different that sounds in your heart? This doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be loved. A final thought, like a candle. Zen doesn't shout. It never promises fireworks. It offers lanterns, quiet, flickering truths that light the path only a step at a time. The worn-out shoes taught me this. Your life is not waiting to be replaced. It is waiting to be noticed. Every scuff, every threadbare memory, every line across your skin. They are not damage. They are testimony. That you've walked, that you've lived, that you are still here. Next time, we'll explore a deeper silence, the practice of no mind, and how releasing the need to think, fix, or analyze can reveal a space of peace that's been inside you all along. But for now, let your tired thoughts fall like shoes by the door. Let the world be worn and good. Let your soul feel the softness beneath it and sleep gently. Part 4. The mind that is no mind. Close your eyes, dear listener. Imagine a sky, vast and blue. Not a single cloud, just openness. Now, imagine one thought, like a bird, flying across it. Then another, and another. But what remains after the birds have passed? The sky, unmoved, untouched, always there. That is your mind, before thinking. That is what Zen calls mushin, no mind. And once I tasted it. The story that found me. There is a Zen story, simple as breath. A student asks the master, "How can I empty my mind?" The master replies, "Bring me your mind, and I will empty it." The student says, "But I cannot find it." The master smiles. Then it is already empty. I read this on a sleepless night, the kind where thoughts buzz like mosquitoes, impossible to swat. I was buried in questions about work, about health, about aging, purpose, loss. And no matter how much I tried to solve them, they multiplied. That line stayed with me. Bring me your mind. How strange, I thought, that I could not find what I thought I was. Thinking about thinking. Most of us believe we are our thoughts. We say, "I am anxious. I am confused. I can't stop thinking." But Zen whispers something else. You are not your thoughts. You are the space they pass through. Just like the sky is not the bird, but the vastness it flies across. This truth doesn't arrive loudly. It sneaks in the quietest places. My first glimpse of no mind. There was a moment, brief but unforgettable. I was sitting at the edge of a lake in late November. The wind had calmed. The surface of the water was so still, it reflected the trees with perfect clarity. For a long time, I watched. And then, something happened. I noticed I wasn't narrating. I wasn't naming what I saw. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just there. The lake, the breath, the silence. And in that instant, there was no me and lake, just being. Not a thought, not a word, only presence. It lasted maybe 20 seconds, but those 20 seconds have never left me. The trap of fixing ourselves. We often seek Zen as a tool to fix our minds. We say, "I want to quiet the noise. I want to stop overthinking." But Zen doesn't fix, it points. It shows us that the mind isn't a machine to repair. It's a river, and peace comes not from damming it, but from stepping out of the current. I spent years trying to be better, to be more calm, more mindful, more wise. And then I read this. Enlightenment is nothing special. Just wash your bowl. How ordinary, how frustrating, how freeing. The path was not about achieving something. It was about removing what was never real. Practical mushin, living without clinging. No mind doesn't mean no awareness. It means a mind that isn't stuck. When I began practicing this, I noticed small changes. I stopped needing to have the last word in conversations. I no longer obsessed over being understood. I let people speak and let silence stay. I could watch a thought rise. She should have called me. I'm not enough. What if I fail? And not follow it. Like watching clouds drift instead of climbing into each one. That's the quiet power of mushin. You stop being a prisoner to passing weather. You become the sky. Zen on a Tuesday morning. One morning, I spilled tea on a new book. My old self would have flinched, sighed, tried to clean it fast, muttering frustration. But that day, I simply watched the stain bloom on the page. Brown, irregular, quiet. And I thought, that is what this moment looks like. No resistance, no judgment, no storyline, just this. And in that moment, I tasted peace deeper than any affirmation could offer, because nothing was added, only the struggle was removed. Your mind tonight. As you listen now, perhaps your thoughts are drifting, worries surfacing, memories rising like bubbles in still water. Don't fight them. Don't follow them. Just watch. Name nothing. Grasp nothing. Let each thought be like a leaf in a stream, and return to the stream itself, your breath, your being, this quiet. There is nothing wrong with your mind. It is only tired of being told what to be, a soft practice for sleep. Tonight, when you lie down, try this. Close your eyes, and instead of thinking, I must sleep, just observe whatever comes. The tick of the fan, the warmth of your blanket, the silence behind the sounds. And when a thought appears, bow to it gently, inwardly, and let it pass. Say softly to yourself, I am not the thought. I am the one who sees. And in that seeing, you may find a peace that does not depend on anything. A closing whisper. Zen does not ask you to become different. It asks only one thing. Can you see clearly what is already here? Because under the noise, beneath the effort, beyond the striving, you are already the sky. You are already the lake. You are already the space between the thoughts. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not late to awaken. You are here. And that is enough. Next time, we'll step into paradox, the sound of one hand clapping, and how contradiction, instead of confusing us, can lead us home. Until then, may your thoughts settle like dust. May your breath carry you inward. May your mind remember its sky nature. Sleep deeply and return whole. Part 5. The sound of one hand clapping. Are you still with me, dear listener? Then let us drift further into a stranger silence, the kind that hums beneath understanding, the kind that lives in the corners of paradox. There is a sound I want to show you, but you cannot hear it with your ears. You must hear it with your not knowing. It is the sound of one hand clapping. A koan that stopped my mind. I first encountered this riddle in a tiny Zen book printed on rice paper. The line leapt off the page like a whisper wrapped in thunder. You know the sound of two hands clapping. Now show me the sound of one hand. It made no sense. It wasn't supposed to. That was the point. Koans like this are not puzzles with clever solutions. They are designed to break the mind's grip on certainty. At the time, I was deep in a season of questioning. I had just lost a job I loved. A friendship had drifted away without closure. And each morning, I awoke with a dull ache behind my ribs, as though something invisible had shifted and could not shift back. I wanted answers, reasons, explanations. But Zen did not give me answers. It gave me this. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The hunger to understand. I'll be honest, I hated it at first. I wanted to be told what it meant. I wanted a teacher, a diagram, a moral at the end. But all I found were monks smiling without saying much, and stories that only led deeper into questions. It felt like being handed a mirror in the dark. And then one evening, as I sat in the hush of my apartment, watching the shadow of my ceiling fan circle the room, something strange happened. I stopped trying to understand. I let the question just be there, like a candle that didn't light anything, but was still warm. I whispered aloud, "Maybe it's not about hearing." The lesson beneath the riddle. What is the sound of one hand clapping? It is the sound of your mind letting go. The moment your thoughts fall silent, not because you've solved something, but because you've surrendered the need to. It's the quiet when you stop chasing meaning and begin listening to mystery. Zen does not seek to explain life. It invites you to experience it without filters. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound you hear when nothing needs to be fixed. It is not noise. It is presence. Paradox as a doorway. We fear contradiction. We want either or. We want straight lines and tidy boxes. But life is a spiral. You can grieve and be grateful. You can be lost and still walking. You can hold on while letting go. Zen taught me this. When you truly understand, nothing is left to understand. The mind will never be comfortable with that, but the heart recognizes paradox as truth. Because life is not a riddle to solve, it's a riddle to live inside. A personal moment of one-handed sound. Years ago, I was sitting with my father in a hospital room. He was quiet, thin, his eyes more sky than flesh. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. We just sat. And in that sterile room, under the hum of machines, I felt a presence so thick, so tender, I could barely breathe. There were no words, no insights, no lessons, but something sacred was happening. It wasn't silence. It was deeper than silence. It was the sound of one hand clapping. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat with something you couldn't name? An ache that didn't ask to be cured? A joy too soft for words? That too is the sound. It's not just in the monastery. It's in your kitchen, in your walk to the mailbox, in your quiet glance at the stars while brushing your teeth. Paradox is everywhere. And when you stop trying to master it, you begin to belong to it. What the masters say. There's an old teaching. Great doubt, great awakening. Small doubt, small awakening. No doubt, no awakening. At first, it sounds backwards, but look closer. It means the more willing you are to not know, the deeper you go. Certainty is a small room. Unknowing is a wide open sky. The sound of one hand clapping is not a riddle to break. It is a gate to stillness, to surrender. Try this tonight. As you prepare for rest, sit or lie down, close your eyes, and instead of asking, "What does this mean?" ask nothing. Let the breath rise. Let the breath fall. Let paradox be your pillow. If thoughts come, as they will, greet them like a friend who doesn't need to stay. And when you hear that silence that isn't quite silence, that peace that isn't quite peace, you may be hearing something you can't describe, a softness beneath the name of things. You may be hearing the sound of one hand. Final whisper. You don't need to chase clarity tonight. You only need to allow unknowing to sit beside you. Let it rock you. Let it soothe you. Life is not a puzzle to be solved before sleep. It is a river that flows whether you understand or not. And you are already floating, quiet as a shadow on water, whole as the silence between waves. Next time, we'll step back into the world with the story of the broken teacup and why sometimes what shatters is the very thing that sets us free. Until then, listen for what cannot be heard, trust what cannot be said, and rest where nothing needs to be done. Good night. Part 6. The Broken Teacup. Tonight, I will not ask you to fix anything. Instead, I invite you to sit beside what has been broken, not in shame, not in fear, but in quiet reverence. Because sometimes, dear friend, what cracks is not a failure. It is an invitation. Let me tell you the story of the broken teacup, a moment that shattered gently. Years ago, I was staying at a small Zen guest house nestled in the hills of Kyoto. The mornings were fog-wrapped. The air carried the scent of pine and silence. There were no clocks, no televisions, only the sound of soft slippers on wood. One afternoon, as I sat alone sipping tea in a sunlit room, a novice monk entered quietly with a tray of delicate porcelain cups, each one hand-painted, ancient, imperfect in a way that felt sacred. As he set the tray down, his sleeve brushed one of the cups. It fell. Time slowed. And then, the sound. Porcelain against wood. Then, porcelain against itself. Crack. Snap. Silence. The monk froze. I froze. And then, instead of panic, he bowed deeply to the shattered pieces and whispered something I didn't understand. He turned to me and said in slow English, "Now it is free to become something else." A new kind of beauty. Later, I learned about kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold. They do not hide the cracks, they fill them with beauty. Every fracture is traced in shimmering light. Every line is honored, not erased. The philosophy behind it is simple and radical. What has been broken can be made more beautiful, not despite the damage, but because of it. When I first heard this, I thought of objects, but then I thought of myself, my own hairline fractures. I used to carry great shame for my past, moments I had spoken in anger, times I had pulled away instead of reaching out, regrets that clung to me like old coats I couldn't throw away. I thought healing meant pretending I'd never fallen apart, but Zen whispered something else. Wholeness does not mean unbrokenness. It means nothing is left out, not even the pain. I began to see my wounds differently, not as flaws, but as places where something deeper had entered. Compassion, patience, humility. These didn't come from getting everything right. They came from falling and rising quietly. The broken teacup inside us all. You too carry cracks. Some you speak of easily. Others live in silence, behind your eyes, beneath your laughter, between breaths. They are not weaknesses. They are maps. Each one marks where life touched you deeply enough to change you. You don't need to hide them. You don't need to explain them. You only need to see. They are part of the cup, part of what makes you real. A practice of gentle holding. Zen doesn't ask you to fix the cup. It asks, can you hold it with both hands, even as it trembles? Here's a simple practice you can try tonight. Sit comfortably. Place your hands together, cupped, like they're holding something fragile. Now imagine a moment of loss, a mistake you've carried for years, a hurt you still don't fully understand. Place it in your palms, gently, and instead of judging it, just breathe. Inhale, exhale. No fixing, just holding. Feel how the hands don't need to squeeze. They only need to allow. That, too, is healing. A memory that changed me. There was a time in my life when I felt like a cracked vessel. After a relationship ended, not with shouting, but with silence, I wandered the days like a ghost through my own home. I questioned everything: who I was, what I offered, why I wasn't enough. One evening I was washing dishes. My favorite cup, a blue ceramic one with a chip in the rim, slipped from my hands and broke into 3 pieces. I stood over it, breath held, but instead of despair, I felt recognition. I whispered, "Me too." And then, for reasons I can't explain, I gathered the pieces, dried them carefully, and glued them back together with gold paint I found in an old art box. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And when I drank from it the next morning, the tea tasted warmer than ever before. Let me ask you, gently, what have you broken? Or perhaps, what has life broken for you? And can you, even if just for tonight, stop seeing it as damage and begin seeing it as the place where light might enter? What if your sadness is not a flaw, but a doorway? What if your failure was not the end, but a beginning in disguise? Sleep with the cracks showing. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, don't smooth yourself into something flawless. Let your softness stay soft. Let your edges remain uneven. Wholeness is not symmetry. It is honesty. If a thought of regret visits you, don't push it away. Place it beside your pillow like a pet that needs nothing but presence. If a memory rises, let it float. It does not need to be resolved. It only needs to be held. Like gold in a crack. Final whisper. You are not broken. You are not ruined. You are not too late. You are a cup that has been held by storms, and somehow you still hold light. Zen doesn't promise to fix you. It promises to help you see that you were never lost, only changed, only made deeper, only waiting to shine from the lines. Next time, we'll walk barefoot into a different kind of story, where the absence of noise becomes its own teacher. We'll explore the lesson of the bell that doesn't ring, and how silence is not empty. It is full of answers we forgot how to hear. Until then, sleep gently and let your cracks breathe. Part 7. The Bell That Doesn't Ring. Some teachings are spoken aloud. Others arrive without sound. Tonight, I want to tell you about a bell. Not the kind that chimes in temples or cathedrals, but the kind that never makes a sound. And yet, it taught me more than 1,000 sermons ever could. The silence that followed me. There was a winter when my world became quiet. It wasn't peaceful quiet. It was unsettling. A close friend had passed, unexpectedly, and the days that followed were filled with long hours where the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional crow outside the window. I remember sitting at my dining table, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. Time seemed suspended. The world had dimmed, as though someone had turned the volume down on everything, and I didn't know what to do with that silence. It felt too big, too loud somehow, like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing, even though no one had struck it. The bell at the monastery. Years before, I had visited a Zen temple on the edge of a forest. They had a large bronze bell, suspended between 2 wooden beams, but it was cracked. One of the monks told me they never replaced it. Why? I asked. He smiled and said, "Because its silence teaches more than its sound ever did." At the time, I thought it was poetic nonsense. But now, sitting in my apartment, surrounded by a grief I couldn't name,
I began to understand. There are moments when noise cannot reach what needs to be heard. Only silence can. Learning to listen differently. Zen doesn't ask us to fill the silence. It invites us to fall into it, to see it not as a void, but as a space, rich, alive, generous. In the weeks that followed my loss, I stopped trying to distract myself. No music, no podcasts, no self-help lectures. Just quiet. And in that quiet, something strange began to happen. I started to hear things I'd missed for years. The rhythm of my own breath, the creak of the floor beneath my chair, the distant sound of wind brushing past buildings, and most mysteriously, the voice of something within me I had forgotten how to hear. Not a voice with words, a presence, a soft noticing, like a bell that didn't ring, but was still felt.
Zen and the Soundless Teacher. There's a story I love. A student once asked a Zen master, "What is the most important teaching?" The master held up a finger to his lips and said nothing. The student waited. Then he grew frustrated. "Say something," he demanded. The master whispered, "When the mind stops grasping, the teaching begins." What I found in the silence. I realized I had lived most of my life afraid of silence. Not because it was empty, but because it reflected everything I tried to avoid. Regret, longing, unfinished conversations. The deep question, am I truly living or just moving? But Zen showed me something revolutionary. Silence is not absence. It is the presence of what cannot be spoken. When we stop filling the room with our noise, we begin to notice what's already waiting for us. And often, what's waiting is us. Your inner bell. Tonight, I want you to know, you too have a bell inside you. It doesn't ring to be heard. It simply is. You don't need to strike it. You don't need to name it. You only need to sit long enough to feel its quiet vibration return. This is not mystical. It's deeply human. You've felt it before. When watching snowfall at dusk. When sitting beside a sleeping child. When walking alone and realizing you're not lonely. That bell, it doesn't need to make a sound, because it is the sound. Let me ask you gently. When was the last time you sat in silence, not to escape, but to return? Not to avoid the world, but to re-enter it through stillness. What might you hear if you allowed yourself 10 minutes of unbroken quiet tomorrow morning? What small truth has been knocking, softly, patiently, beneath the noise of your daily doing? It may be nothing dramatic. It may be as soft as the knowledge that you are allowed to rest, that the world can go on without you carrying it. A practice for tonight. Before sleep, try this. Turn off the light. Turn off the thoughts. Let your body be soft and listen. Not with your ears, with your heart. Not for music, not for answers, but for the space between. If tears come, let them. If peace comes, let it. And if nothing comes at all, then you've already arrived. That is the lesson of the bell that doesn't ring. Final whisper. Zen doesn't give you sound to chase. It gives you silence to trust. In a world addicted to answers, you are allowed to sit with mystery. Let the bell inside you remain unstruck tonight. Let its stillness soothe your thoughts. Let your soul settle around the quiet like dust around an old altar. You are not missing anything. You are simply remembering. Next time, we'll meet the story of the sweeping monk and how ordinary moments, like brushing leaves or washing a bowl,
can become sacred when done with presence. But for now, sleep inside the silence and let it hold you like something precious, because you are. Good night. Part 8. The Monk Who Swept the Leaves. Some teachings arrive through thunder, others through the brush of a broom on stone. Tonight, I want to take you to a temple courtyard. Not grand, not carved with gold, but quiet, moss-laced, and filled with falling leaves. And there, I want to show you someone. He wears no name tag. He carries no title. He holds no scripture.
But he holds a broom. And in that broom, I found an answer I didn't know I was looking for. A morning at the temple. I had come to the temple expecting wisdom. Big, beautiful wisdom. The kind that unfolds in sacred halls and sounds like poetry. Instead, I found silence, plain walls, simple routines. On my second morning, I woke before sunrise. The air was cool, tinged with wood smoke. And as I stepped into the courtyard, I saw him, an old monk sweeping leaves from the stones. He moved slowly, deliberately, one stroke at a time, not chasing efficiency, not trying to finish, just sweeping. There was no music, no audience, no reward, only presence, and I couldn't stop watching. More than just leaves. Something in the way he moved, it felt like he was having a conversation with the ground. Each motion was prayerful, each stroke gentle, complete. He paused to notice the way a single red leaf curled at its edges, then swept it aside with the same care you'd give a sleeping child. I stood still, hidden behind a pillar, not wanting to disturb what felt like a ceremony. And then the strangest thought passed through me. This man is not cleaning, he's bowing. The wisdom of the ordinary. Later, I asked another monk about him. The monk smiled and said, "Ah, he's been sweeping that same courtyard for over 30 years. He never asks for a new job. He says, this one teaches me everything." I was stunned. Everything? From sweeping leaves? That night, I lay in my room and stared at the wooden ceiling. I thought about how often I had tried to escape the ordinary, rushing through dishes, avoiding errands, thinking, this is just life getting in the way of living. But what if I had missed the point? Zen and the art of being present. Zen doesn't ask us to seek higher ground. It asks us to sink into what's already beneath our feet. The monk with the broom wasn't just moving debris. He was meeting the moment, fully, gently, without judgment. That's the heart of Zen. Not climbing mountains of meaning, but being present with each step on flat earth. You can wash a bowl as meditation, fold a shirt as practice, greet the morning light through your window as a teacher. Nothing is beneath your attention. Everything, even sweeping, can become sacred if you are there. My own turning point. After returning from that trip, I changed something. Every morning, I swept the small patch of stone behind my home. It wasn't dramatic, just 10 minutes. But I didn't allow myself to rush. No music, no podcast, no multitasking. Just sweeping. Feeling the handle in my hand, watching the leaves move, listening to the soft scrape of straw on stone. At first, my mind wandered, but slowly, something softened. The world quieted. I was no longer preparing for the day. I was already inside it. Let me ask you this. What part of your day feels in the way? Is it the dishes, the laundry, the grocery list, the walk to the mailbox? What if, instead of rushing through it, you entered it like a sacred ritual, not to finish, but to feel?
What might change if you stopped trying to get past the moment and stepped fully into it? A small practice for tomorrow. When you wake up, choose one ordinary action: making your bed, washing your face,
Boiling water. And do it like the monk with the broom. Move slowly. Notice the textures. Feel the warmth. Breathe. If your mind wanders, bring it back, not with force, but with kindness. You're not trying to be perfect. You're just trying to be here. And that is enough. Final whisper. We spend so much of life waiting for the big moment. But what if the sacred is hidden in the small? In the sound of soap sliding over porcelain, in the brush of leaf against stone, in the warmth of a towel freshly folded. Zen does not shout. It leans close and says, right here, this moment, nothing missing. So tonight, let the ordinary become holy. Let the unseen become enough. Let every breath be a brushstroke of presence, and sleep gently. Next time, we'll enter a deeper stillness through the story of the candle that burned without flame, and we'll learn that sometimes what lights the way isn't what we see, but what we feel in the dark. Until then, rest well, dear friend, and sweep your sleep with care. Part 9. The Candle Without Flame. There is a kind of light that does not glow, and a kind of knowing that arrives only when we cannot see. Tonight, I want to walk with you into a room. The lights are out. There is no window. Only shadows, soft and endless. And yet, in the center of this darkness, there is a candle. It does not burn. It does not flicker. But somehow, it illuminates everything. Let me tell you how I found it. A season without light. There was a winter when nothing in my life made sense. The plans I had built began to crumble. The people I leaned on drifted. My health faltered. My mind refused to rest. It was the kind of season where even good news felt like a whisper in a storm. And all I wanted was clarity, a light, some direction, anything. But what came instead was silence. No answers, no signs, only the slow ticking of empty days. I felt as though I was walking through a cave with no end. And then, one night, in the middle of that long dark, I came across a story, the tale of the unlit candle. An old Zen monk once asked his students, "If you are trapped in darkness and cannot find a flame, what lights your way?" The students eagerly answered, "Memory, faith, hope, each other." The master nodded, then pointed to a candle that sat on the altar, unlit, and said simply, "This is the mind when it stops seeking light. It becomes one." What does that mean? I didn't understand it at first. How can a candle that doesn't burn illuminate anything? But as the weeks passed and I sat with that story, something began to shift inside me. I realized I had spent my whole life chasing brightness, chasing answers, chasing certainty, always trying to solve the darkness. But Zen asks a different question. What if the darkness is not the enemy? What if it is the teacher? Sitting in the cave. So one evening, I stopped. I stopped searching. I stopped explaining. I turned off every light in my house, even the small ones. I sat in the middle of the room. No phone, no music, no prayer, just stillness. And at first, it was uncomfortable. My thoughts clawed at me. This is pointless. You should be doing something. This doesn't help. But I kept sitting. And after a while, the noise began to fade. Not all at once, but gently, like dust settling. I felt the air more clearly. I heard my heartbeat. I noticed the way darkness has texture, soft, almost warm. And somewhere in that stillness, something inside me opened. Not a revelation, not a miracle, just presence. And presence, I learned, is its own kind of light. Zen and the lightless lamp. There is a phrase in Zen: the moon does not light the night reveals the moon. It means this: sometimes we only find our deepest truths when everything we used to rely on is gone. When you cannot lean on understanding, you begin to feel life more directly, not through labels or analysis, but through pure being. The candle that does not burn is the self that stops performing, and from that still self, a quiet glow begins to rise. Let me ask you this: have you ever sat in the dark, not out of sadness, but out of surrender? Have you allowed yourself to be not useful, not impressive, not productive, just here? That is what the candle without flame teaches. You do not have to shine to be a source of light. Your presence, in its pure, unpolished, unforced form, is enough. Even now, especially now. A practice for darkness. Tonight, I invite you to try this. Before bed, turn off all the lights. Sit upright. Let the darkness fill the room. And do nothing. No mantra, no goal. Just sit. Notice your breath. Notice the feel of air on your skin. Notice the silence. And if fear or discomfort comes, greet it. Welcome it like a long-lost traveler. Say softly, within yourself, "You are allowed to be here." Then return to stillness and wait, not for something to happen, but for the knowing that nothing needs to. What I learned in the dark. In that season without light, I discovered something I still carry today: that I am not the brightness of my thoughts. I am the stillness beneath them. And that when the world no longer makes sense, when the road disappears, when no stars are visible, I can sit in the cave and trust the dark to hold me, because even in that place, something glows, not outside me, inside. Final whisper. The candle without flame is not broken. It has not failed. It simply does not need to burn to be whole. You, too, do not need to prove your worth, not through action, not through brilliance, not through endless effort. You were never meant to be a torch. You are already the room, and in that room, the quietest truths unfold. Next time, we'll return to the world with new eyes through the story of the cracked mirror, and how seeing ourselves clearly means embracing the distortions, the faults, and the beauty that hides in imperfection. But for now, let the darkness be a blanket, let the silence be enough, and let the flame inside you rest. Good night. Part 10. The Cracked Mirror. Tonight, we are not chasing peace. We are letting it find us, just as we are. Because sometimes the journey isn't about walking forward. It's about turning and finally facing your own reflection. But not the polished one, not the filtered one, the real one. The one that lives inside a cracked mirror. How I found the mirror. It was tucked in the corner of a tea room in rural Japan. Small, oval, the silver rim dulled with age, and right through its center, a hairline crack, jagged and delicate, like a scar the glass had long made peace with. No one seemed to mind. People came and went, adjusted their scarves, checked their hair. The mirror remained silent, patient. I remember looking into it, expecting distortion, expecting to see something broken. But what I saw stopped me. My face, older than I remembered, tired eyes, creases near the corners of my mouth, but soft, honest, whole in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. It wasn't the crack that unsettled me. It was the truth. I saw me, without improvement, without hiding. And somehow, that was enough. The fear of seeing ourselves. Most of us live in curated mirrors. We check ourselves through others' opinions, through achievements, through memories of who we were, or who we think we should be. But Zen doesn't hand us a clean mirror. It hands us a cracked one and says, look, not to judge, not to fix, but to see. The parable of the mirror. There's an old Zen tale. A young monk asks his master, "Why do I feel disconnected from myself?" The master hands him a mirror with a long scratch across it. "What do you see?" he asks. The monk says, "A distorted version of me." The master replies, "No, that's the version of you that includes the scratch, and therefore the truest." What cracks teach us. In that cracked tea room mirror, I saw more than a reflection. I saw grief, the kind I'd carried in silence for too long. I saw all the roles I'd played, the responsible one, the helper, the strong one who never broke down. And I saw exhaustion. But I also saw resilience, not the loud kind, the quiet, steady kind, the kind that still showed up, still cared, still reached for meaning, even after life had drawn its lines across me. I did not flinch. That was new. The wisdom of imperfection. Zen doesn't teach us to polish our image. It teaches us to let go of the illusion that there is such a thing as flawless. There is no such mirror. There is no such self. Only the unfolding moment. Only the breath. Only the truth of what is, not what should be. And within that truth, a quiet beauty begins to glow. Not despite the crack, but through it. The mirror you carry. You too have a mirror. It may not hang on your wall, but it lives in your mind, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you measure your worth, in the way you turn away from your reflection or dare to turn toward it. Tonight, I invite you to gaze, not to fix, not to criticize, just to meet the one who lives behind your eyes and say, even softly, "I see you, all of you, and I will not look away." A practice of soft recognition. When you wake tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you dress or worry or plan, go to the mirror just for 1 minute. Look, not with analysis, not with judgment, but with the eyes of a monk. See the skin that has felt seasons, the hands that have held sadness and joy. The eyes that still seek light, even after long nights, and whisper something simple. This, too, is sacred. A moment that changed me. After that tea room experience, I stopped avoiding mirrors, not because I loved what I saw, but because I no longer needed to love it, to honor it. Now, when I pass a mirror, I pause, not to check, but to recognize, to remember that the person in the glass has walked through so much, carried so much, and still stands, even with 1,000 invisible cracks, especially with them. Let me ask you gently, what part of yourself have you turned away from? What story still tells you that you are too much or not enough? What if the truth is simpler and kinder? What if you are not a problem to be solved, but a reflection to be held with soft hands? The cracked mirror doesn't show imperfection. It shows the realest parts of you, the ones that haven't been smoothed, the ones that still ache, the ones that survived. Final whisper. Tonight, don't wish to be whole. You already are. Not because you are unbroken, but because you are honest, because you are willing to see without turning away. Zen says, to see clearly is the beginning of freedom. So let the mirror remain cracked. Let it catch the light in strange ways, and let it reflect back a self that is not finished, but is fully, perfectly becoming. Next time, we'll step into the story of the bowl that was never empty and explore how generosity, when done without self, becomes an endless well, one that fills not just others, but the giver too. But for now, let your reflection fade into the dark. Let your breath soften your chest and sleep with the whole of who you are. Good night. Part 11, The Bowl That Was Never Empty. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about giving, not the kind that costs you, but the kind that frees you. Because there is a bowl, an invisible one, that lives within each of us, and when we learn how to hold it properly, it never empties. It becomes eternal. Let me begin at the place where I first learned this truth, not in a temple, but in a crowded train station. An unexpected gesture. I was in Bangkok, tired and lost in translation, when an elderly street vendor approached me. She wore a faded apron, her sandals barely holding together, her cart filled with rice dumplings wrapped in banana leaves. I tried to wave her away politely. I had just eaten, but she simply smiled, placed a dumpling in my hand, and walked off before I could offer a single coin. Stunned, I chased after her, fumbling for money. But she shook her head, still smiling. "No need," she said. "You looked hungry. Maybe not for food, but still hungry." Then she bowed slightly and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, holding the warm weight of that dumpling, and I cried. Not because I needed it, but because something inside me, some quiet, forgotten place, had just been seen. The parable of the bottomless bowl. Later that night, I remembered a Zen story. A young monk asks his teacher, "How can I give without losing myself?" The master hands him a simple wooden bowl. "Fill this," he says. The monk brings rice. The bowl is emptied. He brings water. The bowl is emptied again. He brings coins, leaves, even fire. Every time, empty. Frustrated, the monk cries, "Nothing stays. Everything I give disappears." The master smiles. Then you are beginning to understand. Giving is not about what stays. It is about what flows. An empty bowl becomes bottomless when it forgets to ask, "What do I keep?" Giving without the self. There's a secret in that story. It's this. You are not the source. You are the vessel. When we try to give from ego, to prove our worth, to feel needed, to gain approval, our bowl empties quickly. But when we give from stillness, from love without name, from the part of us that remembers we are all the same river, the bowl does not drain. It expands. My own shift. For much of my life, I gave from fear. Fear of being unloved, fear of being useless, fear of being left behind.
So I said yes too often, gave more than I had, carried what wasn't mine, and eventually I burned out. But after meeting that street vendor, after revisiting the story of the bottomless bowl, I began to shift. I stopped giving to be seen. I started giving because I could, because there was breath, because there was love, because someone else might be hungry, not always for food, but for kindness, for warmth, for a moment of, I see you. Zen and generosity. Zen teaches us to give like a tree gives shade, without expecting applause, without tracking worth. True generosity doesn't keep score. It flows, like a stream that doesn't stop to count how many feet it cools. And strangely, the more it flows, the fuller it becomes. This is not mystical. It's deeply human. And you've felt it. The smile after you help someone without being asked. The quiet joy of leaving a gift no one will trace back to you. The sense of rightness in giving your time without needing to explain. That is the bottomless bowl at work. Let me ask you, when was the last time you gave something that no one saw, but that changed you inside? Not a grand gesture, not a noble sacrifice, but a small offering, a soft glance, a silent prayer, a moment of patience with someone who didn't deserve it. What did that feel like? Didn't it feel light? Didn't it feel like you weren't losing anything? That's the secret. True giving doesn't leave us with less. It returns us to more. A practice for tomorrow. In the morning, before you begin your day, place an invisible bowl in your hands. Hold it gently, close your eyes, and ask, what might I give today that doesn't come from needing, but from simply being here? It might be a kind word. It might be silence. It might be letting someone go ahead in line. It might be not correcting someone, even though you could. Every act, if done with presence, refills the bowl. A moment I'll never forget. There's one last memory I want to share. I once visited a monastery where the monks did alms rounds. They walked barefoot through the village, bowls in hand, heads lowered. They didn't ask, they didn't beg. They simply received. What was given? No more, no less. And every so often, they would stop and share what they had with each other, even if it was just one grain of rice. I asked one of them, doesn't it feel uncertain to rely on strangers? He smiled and said, it feels trusting. We all give. We all receive. Some days I carry food. Some days I carry emptiness. Both are sacred. You don't need to be rich to give. You don't need to be strong. You don't need to be whole. You only need to be open. Your bowl, the quiet, invisible one you carry, will never empty. If you stop using it to hold and begin using it to offer. Tonight, rest in that truth. You are not lacking. You are not broken. You are a vessel, still flowing. Next time, we'll listen to the story of the door that opens inward and explore how the way out of suffering is not through escape, but through deeper presence. Until then, place your bowl by the bedside. Let it fill with sleep, with softness, with dreams you don't need to earn. Good night. Part 12. The door that opens inward. There are doors in life we push and push, only to find they were meant to be pulled. Tonight, I want to speak to the part of you that has been trying so hard to get out, to move on, to fix, to change. And I want to share with you a different kind of path, one that doesn't move forward or upward, but inward. Let's sit together in this quiet space and find the door you've been walking past all along. A time I tried to escape. There was a period in my life when everything felt too much. Too many responsibilities, too many questions, too many emotions with no place to land. I kept saying to myself, I need a break. I need to get away. So I booked a trip.
I thought, new scenery, new peace. But the mountains I visited were silent in a way that echoed my unrest. The sky was wide, but my thoughts filled every inch of it. On the third day, sitting by a lake that looked like glass, I said aloud, almost bitterly, "Why do I still feel trapped?" A breeze passed. A leaf floated down beside me. And in that moment, I remembered a Zen teaching I'd once ignored. The teaching of the inward door. A monk once said, "The door to liberation is not found by walking further. It opens when you stop trying to leave." At the time I first heard it, I thought, how unhelpful. But that morning, beside the lake, something in me cracked. I had been running from my restlessness, from my grief, from the heaviness of being human. And all the while, the escape route I needed was not outside of me, it was within. The parable of the locked room. There's an old Zen story. A student is trapped in a small dark room. He pounds on the walls, shouts through the keyhole, tries every window, every corner. Finally, exhausted, he sinks to the floor and notices something strange. There's a handle behind him on the inside. He turns it. The door opens. He was never locked in. He had simply been pushing in the wrong direction. What we're really trying to leave. We often think we need to change our surroundings, our jobs, our relationships, our routines. But more often than not, what we're trying to escape is a feeling. The ache of uncertainty, the fear of being unseen, the quiet grief of not knowing who we are anymore. But feelings, dear one, are not prisons. They're thresholds. They are not walls to be climbed. They are doors waiting to be opened. My quiet turning point. After returning from that trip, I stopped trying to outrun myself. Instead of planning the next reset, I began sitting quietly each morning. 10 minutes, no music, no goal, just me. Sometimes I wept. Sometimes I sighed. Sometimes nothing happened. But gradually, I began to feel something new. Not happiness, not peace, but space. And within that space, my sorrow could breathe. My confusion could sit without being silenced. My heart, tired and tender, could be held. And slowly, I felt less like I needed to escape, because I was no longer rejecting my own presence. Zen and inner liberation. Zen doesn't offer escape routes. It offers entry points. Into the breath, into the moment, into the truth of what's here, even when it's hard. It says, stop, be still. The answer is not over there. It's here, beneath the noise, behind the story, beneath the part of you trying to hold it all together. The way out is in. Let me ask you, where have you been trying to run? What part of your life feels too heavy to stay with? And can you, just for a moment, turn inward instead? Not to fix, not to heal instantly, but to sit with what is. To open that door, the one that leads into yourself. Not the self you show to others, the one you've been quietly afraid to face. The one who is tired, the one who longs to be met without judgment. That is the self who holds the key. A practice for the door. Try this tonight. Lie down. Close your eyes. Imagine you are standing in front of a simple wooden door. Behind it, everything you've avoided, every feeling, every question, every wound. Place your hand on the handle, and instead of pulling back, turn inward. Open slowly, step in, and say as gently as you can, "I'm here. I won't run anymore." Then breathe. Let whatever comes, come. Tears, warmth, silence, all are welcome, because this is your home. Final whisper. The door you've been seeking is not in another place or another version of yourself. It's not hidden in a retreat, a title, or a breakthrough. It's right here, within your stillness, within your courage to sit and feel instead of flee. Zen doesn't promise a way out. It offers a way in. And when you walk that path inward, you find something miraculous. You are not lost. You are simply waiting to be met. And now, you have arrived. Next time, we'll sit beneath the tree that doesn't grow and explore how staying still, without striving, can sometimes bring more growth than all our effort ever could. But for now, rest by the door. Let it remain open, and let the winds of your own presence carry you gently into sleep. Good night. Part 13. The Tree That Doesn't Grow. Not all growth is upward. Not all change looks like motion. Tonight, I want to share a story. One that stood in the same place for decades. One that never bore fruit, never spread wide branches, never climbed above the others. Some said it was stunted. Some said it had failed to thrive. But they didn't see what I saw, because underneath its unmoving bark, something sacred was happening. A visit to the old forest. There's a forest near where I once stayed, untouched, quiet, thick with moss and forgotten wind. I went there during a time of deep confusion, the kind where you feel like your life has paused, but the world keeps spinning. I walked without purpose, feet pressing soft earth, mind spinning with questions. That's when I saw it, a tree, small, hunched, its bark split with time, its leaves few, its shape curved like someone bowing eternally. It looked out of place. Among tall trunks and full crowns, this tree was silent, still, almost invisible. But something in it stopped me cold. Stillness that spoke. I sat beside it. No birds perched on it. No squirrels ran its limbs. It simply stood, not reaching, not blooming, not performing. And yet, the air around it felt different, heavy but gentle, like the hush of a temple. I placed my hand on its bark, rough, cool, but pulsing, faintly, steadily, not dead, not struggling, just being. The Zen of not striving. There's a Zen teaching that says, the bamboo does not try to grow. The stone does not rush to become moss. They simply are, and in their being, they are complete. I had spent years trying to be better, more productive, more spiritual, more healed. But in that moment, beside the unmoving tree, I heard a deeper truth. You don't always need to grow. Sometimes you need to stay, to root, to rest, to simply be alive without explanation. The illusion of progress. In our world, stillness is often mistaken for failure. We measure life by what's visible: promotions, achievements, milestones, posts. But Zen points elsewhere, to the depth we can't measure, to the roots we don't see. Some trees stretch upward. Some trees stretch inward. And both are growing, just differently. My own season of not growing. After that forest walk, I stopped pushing. For the first time in years, I allowed myself a season of not improving. I didn't start a new project. I didn't fix my schedule. I didn't chase after better versions of myself. I simply let things be as they were. And in that non-doing, something grew. Not outside, but inside. Gentleness, patience, a tenderness toward the parts of me I used to rush past. Like the tree, I stopped blooming on the surface and began rooting in the dark. The tree that taught me stillness. I returned to that forest many times. The tree never changed, but each time I sat with it, I changed, because it reminded me that life doesn't shout. It doesn't always rise with trumpets. Sometimes it hums in the soil, and that's enough. The tree was not in a hurry, and neither was I anymore. Let me ask you, where in your life have you been trying too hard to grow? Where have you confused movement with meaning? Is there a part of you that's tired, not from laziness, but from trying to become something? What if that part doesn't need to become? What if it's already becoming, quietly, invisibly, by simply being felt, allowed, and loved? A practice for still growth. Before sleep tonight, try this. Lie down, place one hand over your heart, the other over your belly, and say softly, I don't need to rise tonight. I only need to root. Breathe. Feel the weight of your body, the warmth beneath you, the earth that always holds. And imagine roots growing from your spine, curling deep into the ground of your being. No need to strive, no need to stretch. Just rest, just root. Final whisper. You are not behind. You are not stagnant. You are not failing. You are resting. You are preparing. You are nourishing unseen roots. The tree that doesn't grow is not lifeless. It is sacred, and so are you. Zen doesn't ask you to hurry. It invites you to stop, to return, to remember. Where you are is enough. Who you are is already deep. Next time, we'll walk into the story of the cloud that didn't rain and explore the wisdom of timing, how not every moment is meant to produce, and how holding back can be an act of compassion. But for now, sleep like a tree, still, strong, silent, and let the dark feed your roots. Good night. Part 14. The Cloud That Didn't Rain. Not every cloud is meant to rain. Not every moment is meant to yield. Tonight, I want to speak to the part of you that feels guilty for resting, that aches when you're not producing, that wonders if holding back means you failed. There's a wisdom in restraint. There's a compassion in pause. And there's a story about a cloud that taught me both. The day I watched the sky too long. It was one of those late afternoons when everything feels suspended. No wind, no birds, just that soft hush before evening. I lay in a field, eyes open, watching the clouds pass overhead. One cloud in particular hovered low, thick, gray, expectant. The others shifted, dissipated, poured, but this one stayed full, refusing to release. It looked as though it should rain, but it didn't. And for some reason, I grew restless. Why won't you do what you're meant to do? I whispered aloud. But even as I said it, I knew. I wasn't talking to the cloud. The pressure to produce. In my life, I had always felt like I had to reign, to deliver, to contribute, to show that I had value through output. Even when I was tired, even when my soul begged for stillness, especially then. I was afraid that if I paused, the world would forget me, that if I didn't pour, I had nothing to offer. That day, watching the unmoving cloud, something softened in me, because it was beautiful, even as it held back, even as it hovered, full of potential, refusing to perform. It was enough. So why wasn't I? The Zen of timing. There's a Zen saying, "The wise do not rush to act. Even water waits to boil." Nature doesn't force itself. The moon doesn't tug the tides early. The seed doesn't sprout just because we beg it to. And yet we, with our soft bodies and tired minds, push ourselves endlessly. Zen asks us to unlearn this urgency, to trust the rhythm of our becoming, to honor the seasons, especially the silent ones. Because what appears as stillness is often preparation. The parable of the cloud. An old Zen master once said, "A student asked the sky, 'Why do you not release your rain?' The sky replied, 'Because the earth beneath you is not ready, and what is forced too soon becomes flood, not nourishment.'" When I first read that, I wept, because I saw my own efforts. All the times I forced myself to speak, to lead, to fix, before I was truly ready, and how those efforts, though well-intentioned, often overwhelmed more than they helped. Holding back can be loving. We live in a culture that praises immediate action. Don't wait. Seize the moment. Strike while the iron is hot. But what if the iron needs to cool? What if the silence is not laziness, but mercy? There are times to act, to speak, to give. And there are times to wait, to observe, to let life ripen on its own, like the cloud that did not rain because the forest below was already soaked. A lesson I learned the hard way. Years ago, I tried to comfort a grieving friend. I spoke too soon. I gave advice when she only needed presence. I poured when all she needed was stillness. And in that moment, my rain did not nourish. It flooded. I apologized. And I never forgot the lesson. Sometimes, love is knowing when not to act. Let me ask you gently, where are you trying to force rain? Are you pressuring yourself to be more useful? Are you rushing into healing before the wound is ready to close? Are you speaking when silence might serve better? What if, just for tonight, you allowed the cloud within you to simply hover? Not because you're empty, but because you're full and wise enough to wait. A practice for the cloud. As you lie in bed tonight, place both hands over your belly. Breathe. Imagine yourself as a soft, full cloud. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are simply holding, not out of fear, but out of patience. Say quietly, "I do not need to reign to be real. I do not prove to be whole." Let that truth settle over you like mist. Final whisper. You are not lazy for resting. You are not selfish for being quiet. You are not behind because you're not pouring right now. You are simply listening. To the wind, to the ground, to the rhythm beneath your rhythm. Zen does not rush you. It bows to your season and whispers, "Even the cloud that does not rain is part of the sky." Next time, we'll sit by the lantern that burns without flame and explore how even in our lowest energy, a soft inner light
can still guide us forward. But for now, float in your fullness. Hold your reign like a blessing, and let the night receive you just as you are. Good night. Part 15. The Lantern That Burns Without Flame. Some lights are not meant to be seen, but they still guide us, quietly, faithfully, endlessly. Tonight, I want to tell you about a lantern. One you can't hang, one you can't light with fire or electricity, because it does not burn in the way you expect, and yet it never goes out. It's the light you carry, even in your darkest hours, and maybe you've forgotten it's there. A night I felt powerless. There was an evening some years ago when I felt completely emptied, not physically, not visibly, but spiritually hollowed out, like a house with all its furniture removed, walls still standing but echoing with absence. I had just returned from visiting someone I loved in the hospital. Their body, once strong, now fragile, their voice thinner each day. The weight of helplessness hung over me like thick fog. I remember turning off all the lights that night, sitting on the floor, and saying aloud to the dark, "There's no light left in me." But then, something surprising happened. The warmth that didn't come from light. As I sat there, eyes closed, a memory floated in. A simple one. My grandmother's hand on my shoulder when I was 8 years old, afraid of a thunderstorm. She didn't say much, just sat beside me, silent, present. And somehow, that presence had been enough to make the fear shrink. And as I remembered it, I felt warmth rise in my chest. Not from anything outside, not from a lamp or fire, but from within. A softness, a glow, something ancient, steady, alive. I opened my eyes, still dark, but the darkness no longer felt empty. The Zen of light without flame. There's a saying in Zen, enlightenment is not about lighting the room, it's about seeing that the light was never lost.
We imagine awakening as a bright flash, a blazing clarity, a sunrise after long night. But what if awakening is the quiet realization that you were never truly in the dark? That within you is a lantern, unseen, unflickering, but always on. Not because of anything you've done, but because of who you are beneath all doing. The story of the hidden lantern. An old monk once said to his students, "Each of you has a lantern in your heart, but you keep looking for torches in the hands of others." One student replied, "But how do we find it, master?" The monk smiled and whispered, "Stop moving, stop asking, sit, and let the dark introduce you to your own light." What that means in our lives. We live in a time of constant brightness, screens, schedules, self-improvement, and yet more people than ever feel lost in shadow. Because light from outside can only reach so far. But the inner lantern that burns without flame cannot be taken, cannot be turned off, only covered by fear, by noise, by the stories we tell ourselves about not being enough. But underneath all that, the glow remains. Moments when you felt it. Maybe you've forgotten that light, but I promise you felt it before. When you held someone's hand and said nothing, but they wept with relief. When you sat beside your dog, heartbroken, and they placed their head on your knee. When you forgave someone, not because they asked, but because you were ready. That warmth, that peace, that was your lantern. Not your mind, not your effort, just your presence, shining quietly. Let me ask you softly, where have you been seeking light? In answers? In approval? In control?
What if what you're looking for has always lived within you? Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, like a candle tucked inside a stone. What if tonight you stopped trying to find it and simply let it glow? A practice for lantern-lit sleep. Before you drift off, lie back. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Close your eyes and imagine a lantern resting just behind your ribs, warm, unwavering, still. Say softly, "I don't have to shine. I only have to be." And breathe into that knowing. Let it warm your hands, your throat, your tired thoughts. Let it light the dreamscape ahead. A final whisper. You are not as lost as you think. You are not as broken as you fear. Even when you forget your light, it remembers you. It waits, not to be seen, but to be felt. Zen doesn't teach you how to ignite. It teaches you how to uncover. And when you do, you realize the light was never missing, only hidden beneath the noise of trying. Next time, we'll walk into the window that faces nothing and explore how even when life offers no answers, no direction, no view, peace can still enter. But for now, let your inner lantern glow. Let your breath be the oil that feeds it, and let the darkness become your companion. Good night. Part 16. The Window That Faces Nothing. Most windows frame a view, but some show you where to stop looking. Tonight, I want to invite you to sit beside a window. Not one with a garden, not one with a view of trees or stars. Just a window that opens to a blank wall, or the side of another building, or fog. A window that faces nothing. And yet, through it, you might just see the most important thing of all. The room with the strange window. Years ago, I stayed in a small guest house during a silent retreat. The room was plain. One bed, one mat, a lamp, a small wooden window. I was excited to look through it, to see a sunrise, a lake, some symbol of peace. But when I opened the shutters, all I saw was a pale gray wall. Concrete, featureless. No birds, no sky, just silence. I remember sighing, disappointed. But something made me sit anyway, and I stared. And something stared back. The Zen of nothing in view. There is a Zen phrase, "The great way is not difficult, only give up picking and choosing." At first, it sounds unrelated, but what it means is this. True peace doesn't come from what you see. It comes from no longer needing anything in particular to appear. The mind always wants a view, something to admire, something to judge, something to plan around. But Zen asks, what happens when the view is nothing? Can you still sit? Can you still see? The story of the window. A monk once meditated every morning in front of a beautiful cherry tree. Its blossoms inspired him. Its cycles reminded him of impermanence. But one spring, the tree was cut down. Construction blocked his view. He considered moving to another room, but his master told him, "Now you must see without beauty. Now you must see without view." The monk stayed, and eventually realized, the space I thought was empty was full of me. What I learned by staring at a wall. Back in my retreat room, I kept sitting each day in front of that blank window. And slowly, the wall became a mirror, not in the way it reflected my image, but in how it reflected my mind. When I was restless, the wall felt suffocating. When I was peaceful, the wall felt luminous. When I was sad, the wall seemed to lean inward.
It wasn't changing, I was. And through it, I discovered that stillness is not about having the right view. It's about letting go of needing one at all. The gifts of facing nothing. When the window offers nothing, you stop waiting for entertainment. You stop waiting for insight. You stop performing, even for yourself. And in that stopping, a soft truth arrives. You are already in the middle of enough. You don't need the sea to remember calm. You don't need mountains to feel grounded. You don't need stars to glimpse the infinite. Sometimes all it takes is a quiet square of light and the willingness to look without expecting. Let me ask you, where in your life are you staring through a window waiting for something to appear? Are you hoping for clarity, for validation, for someone to arrive and say you're on the right path? What if, tonight, you sat with the possibility that nothing more needs to come? That the blank space is not a void, but an invitation, not a punishment, but a mirror. What might you see then? A practice for the window. Before you sleep tonight, sit upright in bed if it feels comfortable. Turn off the lights. Close your eyes. Now, imagine you are sitting before a window. Beyond it, no scenery, just soft, endless gray. No story, no shape. And instead of seeking something, just breathe. Let your mind offer its noise and watch it pass. Let your thoughts push against the silence and watch them soften. Let the blankness become a balm, not a threat. And say softly, I do not need a view. I only need to see. A moment that changed me. There was a morning during that retreat when I woke with a tight chest. Old thoughts had returned, regrets, fear of aging, loneliness dressed in logic. I opened the window. Same wall. I almost closed it. But instead, I sat. And for 45 minutes, the wall did nothing. And in that nothing, I began to weep. Not from pain, from release, from the realization that life is not waiting to become interesting. It is already alive, even here, even now, even in blankness. Final whisper. You don't need a different view to find peace. You don't need the perfect setting, the right moment, the breakthrough epiphany. You only need the courage to sit with what is, even if what is looks like nothing, because that nothing is often the doorway to everything. Zen says, when nothing is left to see, what sees awakens. Next time, we'll walk alongside the bridge that leads nowhere and discover how walking, even without destination, can become its own kind of freedom. But for now, let the window remain open. Let the blankness hold you, and let your own presence be the view. Good night. Part 17, The Bridge That Leads Nowhere. Not all paths are made for arrival. Some are made to be walked, slowly, endlessly, lovingly. Tonight, I invite you to take a walk, not to go somewhere, not to find something, but to discover what remains when nothing needs to be reached. Let's step onto a bridge, one that spans mist, floats above thought, and fades before it ever lands. The morning walk that taught me everything. I remember a quiet morning in a small coastal town. The fog was thick, sea air damp against my skin. I followed a narrow path that curved through dunes and tall grass until it brought me to an old wooden bridge. Long, weathered, quiet. But when I stepped onto it, I noticed something strange. There was no other side. The bridge stretched forward, but ended mid-air above the tide pools below. No destination, no continuation. It simply stopped. I should have turned back, but something made me walk anyway. Each step as a question. The wood creaked gently under my feet. The wind curled around my ears. My breath slowed, and I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. There was nowhere to arrive, nothing to prove, no story to fulfill. Just one step, then another, then another. And with each step, the need to become something dissolved. The Zen of path without purpose. There is a saying in Zen, when walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. Above all, don't wobble. It means, don't walk in order to get somewhere. Don't sit in order to become calm. Just walk. Just sit. Because the moment you attach a reason, a goal, an outcome, a reward, you've already left the moment. You've already stepped off the bridge. Zen is the art of presence, not performance. And that bridge taught me exactly that. The illusion of arrival. Most of my life, I was walking toward things. Better health, more peace, clarity, closure. And while those are beautiful intentions, they also became cages. Because I was always not yet there, always almost healed, always chasing the next step. But when you step onto a bridge that leads nowhere, you begin to see arrival was never the point. Presence was. A monk's story. A student once asked a Zen master, "How do I know when I've reached enlightenment?" The master pointed to a path and said, "Go walk that trail until it disappears." The student walked for hours. The path narrowed, then vanished into forest. He returned, confused. "It went nowhere," he said. The master smiled. "And so did your question. Let me ask you this. What are you trying to get to right now? Peace? Certainty? Rest? A version of yourself that finally feels complete? What if you didn't need to get there? What if peace isn't after the next decision, but already here, in the step you're taking now? What if each breath was not a preparation for something greater, but the greatness itself? A practice for tonight, before you sleep. Imagine yourself on a bridge, wood beneath your feet, fog all around, no destination ahead, no origin behind. Just this step, and the next, and the next. Let your breath follow that rhythm. No goals, no timeline. And whisper to yourself, "I don't need to arrive. I am already walking." Then let go. Let the weight of destinations fall off your shoulders. Let the future sleep in another room tonight. Just walk, softly, nowhere. A memory that returned. That morning, I stayed on the bridge until the fog lifted. Below, tide pools shimmered. Shells sparkled in stillness. Gulls floated like questions without punctuation. And I realized, even without a destination, this was the most complete walk I had taken in years. I returned lighter. Not because I had changed anything, but because I had stopped demanding change. I had trusted the path, even though it didn't go anywhere. And in doing so, I had come home to now. Final whisper. You don't need a map tonight. You don't need to calculate, plan, or figure it out. You only need to walk. Without a reason, without pressure, without proof. Zen does not ask you to succeed. It invites you to return to each step as though it were the first and the last, and to know, deep in your bones, the bridge that leads nowhere
brings you back to the only place that ever mattered. Here. This breath. This moment. Next time, we'll rest beside the river that forgot its name and explore how identity can be both a gift and a trap, and what happens when we stop needing to define who we are. But for now, step into sleep, one breath at a time. No destination, no hurry, just this. Good night. Part 18, The River That Forgot Its Name. What happens when you stop needing to be someone and simply allow yourself to flow? Tonight, I want to bring you to the banks of a river. Not a famous river, not a holy one, just a quiet stream that winds through old stones and tall grass, and somewhere along the way, forgot its name. And in doing so, became more free than any river I've ever known. The map that didn't help. There was a day when I got lost, not metaphorically. I was actually lost, wandering a countryside trail, holding a map that no longer matched the land. I was searching for a marked river, its name circled in ink. But when I found the water, there was no sign, no marker, nothing to confirm its identity. It was flowing, yes, clear and ancient, but unnamed. I sat by it, frustrated. I wanted certainty, to know. But the river didn't seem to care. It flowed just the same. Zen and the disappearing identity. There's a phrase in Zen: first, the mountain is a mountain. Then, it is not a mountain. Then, it is a mountain again. At first, we think we know who we are. Then, life happens. Change, loss, illness, aging. And the identity we held so tightly begins to crack. And maybe, just maybe, what breaks is not a tragedy, but a doorway. Because what comes next is not a new name, but freedom from needing one. The story of the river. A monk once said, "There was a river that forgot its name." The villagers grew anxious. They tried to rename it, but the river only laughed and said, "I am not less water just because you don't know what to call me." I think of that story often, especially on the days I forget who I'm supposed to be. The days I feel directionless, identityless. The days I can no longer fit into old titles: friend, parent, teacher, healer, strong one. And I wonder, maybe the forgetting is where the flow begins. My own identity unraveling. There was a time when I clung so tightly to who I thought I was, the wise one, the calm one, the one who had it together. But illness arrived, and a breakup, and grief that didn't follow any script. And suddenly, I didn't know who I was anymore. And at first, I panicked. Who am I without my roles, without my clarity, without my purpose? But the longer I stayed in that not knowing, the more I began to relax, like the river, just flowing, no need to explain. What identity can't hold. You are not just your name, or your job, or your family role, or your beliefs, or your failures, or even your dreams. You are the one who breathes beneath all of that, the river. And names are only temporary bridges, useful sometimes, but not required for the water to move. Let me ask you, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one needs anything from you? Who are you when even your own mind grows quiet? It's okay if no answer comes. Maybe the answer isn't a word. Maybe it's a sensation, a rhythm, a gentle presence that needs no definition. You don't need to be someone tonight. You only need to be. A practice for letting go of identity.
Tonight, as you lie down to rest, close your eyes and imagine a river flowing through your chest. Cool, gentle, continuous. With every breath, let it carry away the names you've worn today. The helpful one, the tired one, the one who should be doing more. Let each label float downstream and say softly, I am not what I am called. I am not what I remember. I am simply this moment flowing. Then rest. Let the current take you. A moment that changed me. Months after my visit to that river, I returned. Still no sign, still no name. But I noticed something different in myself. I didn't need the name anymore. I just watched it move and felt moved in return. And in that quiet communion, I realized some of the most sacred things in this world have no title, and that is why they remain sacred. Final whisper. You do not have to define yourself tonight, not as good, not as healed, not as clear, not as enough. You already are, by virtue of being here. You are not the name. You are not the riverbed. You are the current. Zen does not ask you to explain. It asks you to dissolve into the mystery you've always been, and to know. The river that forgot its name never forgot how to flow. Next time, we'll visit the garden that was never planted and explore how beauty, joy, and growth can arrive in places you never planned, and how surrender allows life to bloom on its own terms. But for now, let go of your name. Let go of the need to know, and sleep like a river, soft, strong, and forever flowing. Good night. Part 19. The Garden That Was Never Planted. Not every bloom is born of intention. Some are born because nothing stood in their way. Tonight, I want to take you somewhere unexpected. It's not a planned garden, not one outlined in notebooks or dreamed into being by careful hands. It is a garden that was never meant to be, and yet it is, and it is beautiful. A path that led me elsewhere. There was a time I was searching for meaning, again. After a long period of feeling disconnected, I went for a walk in a village I didn't know, down a winding dirt path that led away from any signposts. I thought I was lost. But then, through a break in the trees, I saw something. A patch of wildflowers. Vines curling up broken fences. Moss softening old stone. Butterflies hovering with new clear place to land. A garden, but no gardener. A bloom, but no blueprint. And I stood there, stunned by how complete it felt. Not because of its order, but because of its freedom. Zen and the beauty of unmaking. There's a line in Zen. When the self steps aside, the 10,000 things blossom. It means, the moment we stop forcing, shaping, organizing, defining, something deeper, wiser, more alive is finally allowed to grow. Like the garden I found, untended, yet abundant. Its beauty came not from control, but from letting go. The parable of the unplanted garden. A student once asked a Zen master, "How do I grow a beautiful life?" The master replied, "Pull up the weeds of control. Stop watering only what you like. Then stand back." The student frowned. "But what if nothing grows?" The master smiled. "Then you will finally see the flowers that needed no invitation." What I had been forcing. In my own life, I realized how often I had tried to plant beauty. In relationships, in work, even in healing. I wanted things to look a certain way, to unfold on my terms, to bloom according to my schedule. But life, like wildflowers, doesn't grow in straight lines. It grows sideways, through cracks, in places we forgot to pave over. The magic of what wasn't planned. That day, I sat among the grasses. I let my to-do list fall quiet. I stopped asking what was next. And in that stillness, I noticed something I hadn't in years. I didn't need to earn this moment. I didn't need to name its meaning. It simply was. And I was part of it. Not the gardener, not the owner, just one more soft being resting inside a wild and nameless bloom. Let me ask you this. Where have you been trying to control growth? Where have you planted seeds and demanded fruit before their season? And what might happen if you stopped digging, if you stepped back? What if the most beautiful thing in your life has been growing quietly where you haven't been looking, because you were too busy trying to make it elsewhere? A practice for tonight. Before bed, lie down softly. Imagine a field, untouched, no fences, no names. Now imagine yourself walking through it, not to fix, not to harvest, just to notice. What grows there? What softness has returned without your asking? And say softly, I allow beauty to bloom without my control. I trust life to arrange itself, even when I don't understand. Then rest. Let the petals fold around you. Let the night become your garden. A moment that still lives in me. That wild garden is gone now. The land was sold. The vines were cleared. But it lives in me as a reminder that not everything needs tending, that not all goodness is created, that sometimes life blooms in us precisely when we stop trying so hard, and that letting go does not mean losing. It means making room for what knows how to find its way. Final whisper. You don't have to plant something tonight. You don't have to grow. You don't have to bloom. You only have to allow what is already blooming to be seen. Zen does not require effort. It invites surrender. And through that surrender, your garden, the real one, begins to show itself. It was never yours to build, but it has always been yours to walk in. Next time, we'll visit the bell that rang once and explore how a single moment of clarity, no matter how brief, can echo through a lifetime. But for now, let go of your plans. Let the earth breathe without direction, and let your dreams wander through fields unnamed. Good night. Part 20. The Bell That Rang Once. Sometimes you don't need a symphony. Just one note, clear and true, to wake something ancient within you. Tonight, I want to share with you a story about a bell. But not a bell that rings every hour. Not a ceremonial bell or one rung at temples by monks in robes. No, this bell only rang once, and that single sound never stopped echoing in my life. The moment that surprised me. It was early spring. I had taken a short retreat in the hills of Northern California, a quiet place built around stillness and simple meals. I wasn't looking for anything, not enlightenment, not healing. I just wanted silence. And in that silence, something unexpected arrived. It was the third morning. The sun was barely up. I had stepped out into the dewy garden to breathe, when suddenly, from somewhere deep in the valley below, gong! A single low bell sound rose into the air. It wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. My thoughts, my worries, even my sense of time. And just like that, I stopped. Everything inside me went quiet. The bell and the Zen mind. There's an old Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It reminds us that awakening isn't always loud. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. Often, it's just a shift, a moment when you hear something or feel something so clearly it resets the entire rhythm of your being. Like a bell that rings once, but you spend the rest of your life listening to its echo. The koan of the one sound. A student once asked his Zen teacher, "What is the sound of truth?" The master pointed at the wind chime on the porch. "It rings once," he said. "The rest is up to you." How that bell changed me. It wasn't just a sound, it was a space. In the moment that bell rang, I realized how rarely I truly hear anything. My ears were always filled with plans, with comparisons, with noise I called thought. But in that one resonant tone, I felt something return to me. Stillness. Not the kind you force, not the kind you perform, but the stillness that's always been there, beneath the static of daily life. Like a pond settling, like dust falling to earth. The sound that never ends. What struck me wasn't just the bell, but what came after. That silence. A deep, living silence. As if the world were listening with me. I realized the bell wasn't the awakening. The listening was. Because when you truly listen, not just with ears, but with presence, something opens. And through that open space, clarity flows in. Let me ask you, when was the last time something stopped you in your tracks? Not because it was loud, but because it was true. A word, a glance, a breeze, a memory. What was your bell? And more importantly, did you listen? Did you follow the silence afterward? Or did you rush to fill it? A practice for the one sound. Tonight, let's ring a bell in your imagination. Close your eyes. Inhale slowly. And then, gong. Let that single tone vibrate through your mind. Feel it pass through your chest, your hands, your bones. And when the sound fades, let nothing replace it. Let silence remain. Say quietly to yourself, "I do not need many signs. One true sound is enough. I am listening." And then rest in the echo, in the stillness, in the presence that follows what's been awakened. A story that still guides me. Since that retreat, I've heard many bells, literal ones and metaphorical ones. A stranger's kindness, the sound of my mother's laughter, a child asking me a question I couldn't answer. Each time, I return to that first morning in the hills and remind myself, the bell doesn't have to ring again. What matters is how deeply I continue to hear it. Final whisper. Not every teaching needs to be repeated. Not every answer comes with explanation. Sometimes, truth is just one note, played once, on the strings of your spirit. And if you're quiet enough, if you're open enough, you'll never stop hearing it. Let tonight be that bell. Let sleep follow the silence it creates. And let tomorrow be lived from the place that heard what words could never say. Next time, we'll visit the mirror that refused to reflect, a tale of how we often search for ourselves in others, and how true clarity comes only when we stop looking outward. But for now, let the bell fade, let the air still, and let your breath become your only sound. Good night. Part 21. The Mirror That Refused to Reflect. What do you see
when the world stops showing you who you are.
Tonight, we look into a mirror. Not a polished one, not one from your bathroom wall, but a strange, ancient mirror. The kind Zen masters speak of. A mirror that reflects nothing. And yet, in its stillness, you begin to see yourself more clearly than ever before. When I could no longer find myself. There was a period in my life, not long ago, when I felt like I had disappeared. Friends didn't call, work slowed down. My name wasn't mentioned in rooms anymore. No one seemed to need me. No one seemed to look at me. And strangely, neither did I. I would walk past mirrors without glancing, sit in cafes and avoid my own reflection in the glass. I didn't recognize the person I had become. Or maybe I just didn't see anyone at all. It was as if the mirror of the world had stopped reflecting me. And for the first time, I was truly alone with myself. Zen and the Vanishing Mirror. There's a Zen koan that haunted me in that time. Show me the face you had before your parents were born. It's a riddle, of course. You can't answer it with memory or photograph. It's asking, who are you, really, when no one is looking? When no one remembers you? When no reflection returns? Who are you beneath the mirrors? The Parable of the Cloudy Glass. A monk once stared at a mirror for 3 days, trying to see his true self. On the 3rd day, the mirror cracked. The master said, "Good. Now you might begin." The monk asked, "But how can I see without a mirror?" The master replied, "The mirror was only ever showing you your mask. Now that it's broken, look inward." Losing identity. Finding essence. That season of invisibility was hard. Without people reflecting me back, I felt untethered. Who was I if I wasn't praised, if I wasn't needed, if I wasn't seen? But slowly, beneath the ache of not being noticed, something soft began to rise. Not confidence, not self-esteem, but something quieter. Essence. I wasn't who people thought I was. I wasn't the sum of their recognition. I wasn't even the voice in my head that tried to explain me to myself. I was just this. This breath, this presence, this moment. And it didn't need reflection to be real. A strange kind of peace. With no one watching, I began to walk differently, eat more slowly, speak less, and more meaningfully. I didn't need to perform. I didn't need to impress. I began instead to listen, to silence, to stillness, to the rhythm of my own soul, unchained from mirrors. It was uncomfortable at first, but then it became holy. Let me ask you, when have you felt invisible? Was it painful, or did something awaken in the quiet that followed? Who are you when no one claps for you, when no one responds, when the world goes silent? And more importantly, can you love that self, the one no mirror shows? A practice for the mirrorless night. Tonight, sit gently in the dark. No screens, no reflections, no explanations. Just you and the space around you. Place your hand on your chest. Feel the rise and fall, and whisper, "I do not need to be seen to be whole. I exist even when no one reflects me. I am presence, not image." Then close your eyes and rest in that sacred anonymity, not forgotten, not erased, but returned to the self that was never dependent on reflection, the mirror that taught me nothing. Eventually, I did look into a mirror again, and I smiled, not because I liked what I saw, but because it no longer mattered. The real me wasn't trapped in glass, wasn't shaped by surface. He had been waiting in silence. He had survived the forgetting. And now, he could walk freely,
without needing to be seen. Final whisper. There will be seasons when no one names you, no one praises you, no one even notices you. Let them come, because in those silent stretches, you are handed a gift, the chance to meet the self that no mirror can ever contain. That's the self Zen speaks of, the one you had before your name. Let that version of you fall asleep tonight, held not by reflections, but by truth. Next time, we'll visit the teacup that spilled on purpose and explore how sometimes the things we lose were never meant to be held in the first place. But for now, turn away from the mirrors, let the night hold your shape, and drift into the quiet that reveals who you've always been. Good night. Part 22. The Teacup That Spilled on Purpose. Some things break not because they're flawed, but because they were never meant to stay whole. Tonight, we sit with a teacup, a simple cup, porcelain, white with a faint crack along the side. But what makes this cup memorable is that it spilled on purpose. And in its slow, deliberate overflow, I began to understand the quiet art of letting go. The story I was told. Many years ago, during a visit to Kyoto, an old monk served me tea in silence. We didn't speak. He poured with grace, steady, elegant, mindful. But just as the tea reached the rim of my cup, he kept pouring. A golden stream spilled onto the wooden tray, then onto the floor. He didn't flinch. He didn't stop. Only after several heartbeats did he gently set the teapot down. I looked at him, confused. He smiled. Sometimes, he said softly, the point is the spill. And then he left me alone with the dripping cup and a mind full of questions. The overflow I carried. At first, I thought it was a mistake, or maybe a test. Why would he do that? Did he forget? Was I supposed to clean it up? But then something struck me. In my life, I had always tried to keep things contained, perfect, tidy, controlled. I hated mess. I feared loss. I avoided anything that couldn't be put back together. And yet, here was a deliberate mess, made by a teacher, given without explanation. It wasn't a lesson. It was an invitation. Zen and the full cup. There's an old Zen saying, "You must empty your cup to receive new tea." But what if the emptiness isn't a one-time act? What if it must be done again and again, spilling what no longer serves so space can remain? Zen doesn't admire the one who holds on. Zen admires the one who lets go in time. What I realized weeks later. It didn't hit me immediately, but days after I left the monastery, in the quiet of my home kitchen, I reached for a teacup and paused. I remembered the spill, the tray, the monk's silence, and for the first time, I poured a little too much, just enough to let it run over the edge. I watched it trickle, and I whispered, I release what doesn't need to stay. It was strangely freeing, almost holy, because in that act, I finally accepted that not everything in life must be saved, or finished, or filled. Some things need to be lost on purpose. Let me ask you, what are you holding on to right now that feels heavy? A thought, a regret, a memory, a version of yourself that no longer fits? What would happen if you let it spill? Not violently, not in anger, but softly, gently, the way tea finds the edge and keeps flowing. Could you allow yourself to stop containing it? A practice for the gentle spill. Tonight, as you lie back, Imagine yourself as a teacup, not perfect, but whole enough to carry warmth. Now imagine something inside you, a pressure, a weight, a lingering thought, beginning to overflow. No resistance, no shame, just release. And say to yourself, I allow the overflow. I honor what I no longer need. I make space for stillness. Then breathe and rest. Let the spill become a lullaby for your tired spirit. How it changed me. That monk never explained himself. I never asked. But I've poured thousands of cups since then, each one with more grace, less control, more awareness. I stopped fearing the overflow. I stopped trying to hold more than I could carry. And perhaps most importantly, I stopped assuming that loss is always an accident. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is tip the cup before it breaks on its own. Final whisper. You don't need to finish everything. You don't need to contain it all. Let the tea spill. Let the story overflow. Let your past drip gently from the rim until there is just enough space for peace. Tonight, sleep with an open cup and dream of hands that let go with love. Next time, we'll visit the gate that didn't open but let me through anyway. A tale about finding passage not by force, but by surrender, and how Zen often lets us through, not when we push, but when we stop pushing. Until then, let the spill settle. Let the mess become your teacher, and let sleep come like steam from a freshly poured cup. Good night. Part 23. The gate that didn't open, but let me through anyway. Not all doors need to swing open. Some dissolve when you stop trying to push. Tonight, we arrive at a gate, a heavy, old, unmoving gate. Weathered wood, rusted hinges, locked tight. And yet, I passed through it, not by key, not by force, but by something softer, something quieter. And in that strange passage, I learned what Zen had been whispering all along. The obstacle isn't always real. The moment I reached a wall. A few years ago, I was stuck. You might know that kind of stuck, where every day feels like a closed hallway, where no option feels right, where pushing harder only exhausts you more. I tried changing my job. I tried moving cities. I tried different books, diets, therapies, routines. Nothing moved. I was standing before something I couldn't name, but it felt solid, immovable, and unkind. It felt like a gate that would never open. The dream that shifted me. One night, after weeks of inner storm, I had a dream. I stood before a massive wooden gate. I knocked. Nothing. I pushed. It groaned but stayed closed. I shouted. Silence. I wept. Then, in the dream, an old voice, gentle, unhurried, whispered, "Have you tried not going through?" I stepped back, looked around, and saw that the gate was only a wall in front of me. To the side, there was sky and grass and no fence at all. The gate was a distraction. The world wasn't closed. I just hadn't seen where it was already open. Waking into Zen. That morning, I felt different, lighter, not because the gate was gone, but because I stopped trying to make it open. I stopped pushing and started noticing. Tiny paths opened, a new friendship, a quiet opportunity, a shift in breath, in attention. I didn't break through the gate, I simply walked around it. And somehow, that felt like the most sacred act I'd ever done.
A koan for the gate. A man stands before a door that never opens. He grows old knocking. One day, he turns around and sees he was always inside. This is Zen. This is life. Sometimes the barrier isn't a thing. It's a belief. It's a script. And when that script dissolves, so does the gate. When the mind closes doors. Have you ever told yourself, I can't leave this relationship. It's too late for me to change. This is just how life is. I've tried everything. These are gates too, and they feel real until they don't. Until one day you blink and realize the lock was imagined, that no one nailed you down but your own tired thoughts. And suddenly, you're free to step in any direction. A practice of gentle redirection. Tonight, if you feel stuck, I invite you not to push. Instead, rest. Close your eyes. Breathe in. And as you exhale, say to yourself, not everything must open. Some things dissolve when I stop demanding. Feel your body soften. Imagine stepping away from the heavy gate and walking gently into the meadow beside it. There is always a way through, but it may not look how you expected. How it changed me. Since that dream, I still meet gates, stubborn ones, painful ones, but I meet them differently now. I don't panic. I don't assume they must be opened. Sometimes I wait. Sometimes I walk sideways. Sometimes I sit down beside them and let the world move me until a new path appears. And in doing so, I often discover something richer than I was looking for. Not the job, not the goal, but the freedom to move without force, the wisdom to flow around instead of against. Let me ask you, where do you feel stuck right now? What gate stands in your way? And what if you didn't try to open it? What if you trusted that there's more than one way through? Could you rest in that uncertainty? Could you soften your grip on the outcome, just for tonight? Final whisper. There will always be gates, real ones, imagined ones, emotional ones. But not all were made to be opened. Some were made to teach you how to see differently. So if tonight feels like a wall, let it be and rest. For beyond the gate, there may be a sky waiting to be walked into. And it starts with one step sideways and one breath inward. Next time, we'll enter the quiet woods with part 24, The Leaves That Fell Before I Was Ready, a reflection on loss, timing, and how life often strips us bare before we feel prepared, only to show us that the letting go was always part of the path. Until then, leave the gate where it is. Don't wrestle with it. Just lie back and let peace come in through the open places you forgot you had. Good night. Part 24, The Leaves That Fell Before I Was Ready. There are moments when the tree lets go before the leaf is willing. Tonight, I'd like to take you into a quiet forest. Not the kind filled with birdsong and joy, but a forest dressed in early autumn, still warm, but something has shifted in the air. Something is falling. And as I stood in such a forest one October morning, watching the golden drift of leaves, I felt a deep ache I couldn't name, because the trees were letting go, and I wasn't ready for what they reminded me of. The moment the first leaf fell. It was during a time of unexpected endings. A dear friend had drifted away, not in anger, not in drama, but like a leaf caught in a quiet breeze. One day we were close, the next just silence. I told myself I'd reach out, fix it, explain. But life kept moving, and so did she. And in that forest, as I watched a yellow leaf fall in slow spirals, something in me broke softly. I whispered, I wasn't ready. But the leaf didn't care. It let go anyway. Zen and the wisdom of early fall. There is a Zen saying I once heard in a temple garden. Let go, not when you're ready, but when the time arrives. It sounds harsh, unfeeling, but the more I sat with it, the more I understood. Life doesn't wait for your readiness. Grief comes early. Change knocks when you're asleep. Loss arrives without scheduling it on your calendar. The tree doesn't ask the leaf if it wants to fall. The wind doesn't apologize for coming sooner than expected. And still, there is grace in this design. What I saw in the quiet woods. That morning, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched. Leaf after leaf. Some bright red, some faded brown. They all let go. Not in despair, not in panic, but gently, as if they knew something I hadn't yet accepted. That not being ready doesn't mean not needing to release. The Parable of the Willow Woman. I once heard a tale from a Zen nun, a story passed from mouth to mouth, not written in books. There was a woman whose child left home, never to return. Each day she lit a lantern. Each night she waited. Years passed. One winter, the wind blew hard, and the flame went out. She reached to relight it, but her hand trembled, and she stopped. She whispered, "If the wind knows better than I do, then I will follow it." That night, she let the lantern go, and for the first time in decades, she slept. Let me ask you, what leaf are you still clinging to? A name, a version of your past, a dream you once planted but never bloomed. And what if the timing of its fall is not a mistake, but a mercy? What if you're not supposed to be ready? What if readiness is not the doorway, but the result of walking through? A meditation for falling things. Tonight, I invite you to lie still. Picture a tree, your tree, with all your stories hanging gently from its branches. Now, imagine one story loosening, not torn, not dropped, just loosening. A leaf detaching. Let it fall and whisper, "Even though I'm not ready, I allow this to go." Feel the stillness after it lands. Feel how light the tree becomes. That's you, lighter, clearer, more open to what comes next. How it changed me. After that forest day, I stopped bargaining with the seasons of my life. I let certain friendships fade without bitterness. I stopped asking why things ended before I was ready. I began to trust that life knows something I don't, that the falling isn't punishment, it's rhythm, that every leaf gone makes room for light in spring. And I discovered that when you stop holding on, your hands are free to catch something new. Final whisper. Not every leaf falls in your timing. Some go early, some fall suddenly, some drift for days before finally letting go. But all of them belong to the wind before they belong to you. So tonight, don't fight the fall. Don't resist the rustle. Let go. Even if you're not ready, especially if you're not ready, because in that moment of surrender, something beautiful begins. The space for healing, the ground for rebirth, the silence in which peace takes root. Sleep now, dear one. Let the leaves fall where they must, and know you are still whole. Next time, we arrive at the final chapter, Part 25, The Bell That Rang Without a Sound, a story about presence, stillness, and the invisible awakenings that happen within us when words are no longer needed. Until then, let everything fall and let yourself be held by what remains. Good night. Part 25. The Bell That Rang Without a Sound. Some awakenings don't arrive as thunder. They arrive as a silence that changes everything. Tonight, we arrive at the final place. Not a temple, not a peak, but a stillness. And in that stillness, a bell, old, bronze, dust-covered, waits. It has no clapper, no rope to ring it, yet somehow it echoes, not with sound, but with knowing. This is the bell that rang in me when all the Zen stories fell away. The moment words became too loud. After years of reading, practicing, listening, I reached a strange place. I no longer wanted more teachings, no more books, no more chants or metaphors. Not because I was enlightened, but because I was full. Too full of ideas, too full of questions, even full of silence that was still loud in its effort. I was seeking too hard, and in seeking, I couldn't hear what was already whispering beneath everything. The Monk Who Closed the Book. There's an old story, one I never forgot. A student asked his master, "When will I know I'm ready?" The master said nothing. Instead, he took the sutra scroll from the student's hands, closed it, and set it aside. Then he poured tea, slowly, silently. The student watched, and in that wordless moment, his breath changed. He felt something shift inside. The bell had rung, not in his ears, but in his body, in his being. The soundless awakening. What does it mean to hear a bell with no sound? It means your understanding no longer needs explanation. It means your heart knows without being told. It means you walk through your days not trying to be present, but simply being. No striving, no proving, no drama. Just this breath, this step, this exact moment. Unadorned, unspectacular, perfect. What Zen took from me and gave back. Zen didn't give me new truths. It took away everything that wasn't essential. It took my labels, my definitions, my attachments to being right or good or spiritual. It took the noise. And when it was all gone, what remained was not emptiness, but fullness. A fullness that needed no audience. A clarity that didn't shout. A peace that didn't perform. The bell rang, and I smiled, though no one had spoken. A practice for the end and the beginning. Tonight, I won't ask you to reflect, or meditate, or analyze. Tonight, I ask only this. Just sit, lie down, let the air touch your skin, and listen. Not for sounds, but for the quiet inside you that's been waiting to be heard. If you do, you may find that something answers. Not in language, not in thoughts, but in a sudden knowing, a soft shift, a tear, a sigh. That is the bell. Let me ask you one last time. What if you've already arrived? What if there's nothing left to fix, nothing to earn, nothing missing? What if peace isn't after all the work, but under it, waiting to rise when you finally stop digging? What if this silence is the deepest teaching? Would you dare to trust it? How it changed me forever. I no longer chase insight. I no longer collect wisdom like coins. Now, I sit beside the bell. Sometimes it's dusty. Sometimes I forget it's even there. But then, a still moment comes, and it rings. No sound, no echo, but everything inside me shifts, and I remember. I am already whole, already free. Final whisper. The bell is yours now. My dear listener, you've walked with me through 25 steps, 25 whispers, 25 quiet awakenings. And now, I hand you the bell. You may not hear it tonight. You may not hear it for months, but it is in you, waiting. And one day, when you are most still, when you least expect it, it will ring. And you will know, not because I told you, but because you feel it in the marrow of your being. You are home, a closing blessing. May your days be gentle. May your nights be soft. May your fears dissolve into stillness. May the bell within you always find a way to sing, even in silence. And when you walk, may you leave footprints made of light. Thank you for walking with me. Thank you for listening with your heart. This journey was mine, but I hope, in some quiet way, it became yours too. Sleep well, dream softly, and let the bell ring whenever you're ready to stop seeking and start being. Good night.